So welcome. Thank you for joining me tonight. We're going to be as practical as we possibly can in talking about yoga and Ayurveda. And this is something that's really, really close to my heart. And when we teach at Aligning Health, we try and be really practical because, we feel really good after a yoga class. And there's something that keeps drawing us back. So I get a lot of people that say, oh, I do yoga. Sometimes I'm a little bit more, I practice a little bit more than other times. There's something behind that. The more that we practice, the more we start to learn about ourselves. And Ayurveda, a lot of people find it quite challenging and hard. And a lot of people have trouble saying the word Ayurveda. So I always think of Star Wars. I think of Darth Vader when I'm thinking about the word Ayurveda. And Ayurveda can be really easy when you start to understand some of the basic principles. So the idea of tonight is to give a little bit of an overview. So we're going to be a little bit top heavy, and then we're going to really start to put it into practice. So I've got a group of wonderful people that have joined us for tonight, and I might be answering a few chat questions along the way. But please feel free to make this as completely interactive, because really at the end of the day, Ayurveda is about life knowledge. And the more knowledge that you have about yourself, the more you can start to put into practice. And I love that Ayurveda with yoga is such an empowering self-healing practice. Let's start on the journey. Okay. So my intention at the end of this session, I'm hoping that you will have an understanding of what Ayurveda means. Sometimes the first thing is to be able to say what Ayurveda is. So whether you're with me or not, if you're watching the recording, what is Ayurveda? Can you say Ayurveda? Just the word Ayurveda. So we're going to look at practical ways to understand ourselves. We're going to have an understanding of what it means to look for the core root of the problem, how to be your own therapist. So there was a question that came up before. I think it was Jodie that brought the question up. So if you've got Vata Kapha, how do you start to work to not rebalance Vata? So the more that you start to understand what the core root of an issue is, the easier it starts to work when you're putting the applied practice in. Okay, I'm just going to put mute on. Okay. And then I want to learn some practical strategies that work to bring balance for your mind, your body, and your spirit. So what does this look like? When I'm doing assessments, I'm always asking my students, what does it look like? What does it feel like? So we've got almost that pratyahara, that internal sense experience. What's going on? And this is our power. Okay, so a little bit before we start about me. I always like to know a little bit about who's giving the talk, so you can work out where they've come from and what they're basing their knowledge on. So my name's Sarah, and I've been working at Aligning Health now. It's time starting to fly, probably for about 6 or 7 years now. I started off as a yoga teacher over 10 years ago now, and heard this word Ayurveda. And it was a little bit too hard. I couldn't say it properly either in the beginning. And the more that it started to knock on the door and the more that I started to look into it, the more it started to change my yoga. So one of the things that we did is to build a yoga and Ayurvedic health retreat center where we can bring it all together and use that empowering self-knowledge. The other thing that we did at Aligning Health was to find some amazing therapists. And we work with these amazing therapists to provide practical instruction on how to apply 2 really old age sciences into our Western concept. So we're a little bit of everything. You can see me sitting in this photo here. You can see my lovely friend, Dr. Pratibha. Dr. Pratibha is our Bachelor of Ayurvedic Medicine and Surgery qualified our staff member in our qualifications. And we also take people, when it's not COVID, we take people across to her Ayurvedic hospital in India, which is something that we're very much looking forward to doing it again. And then you can see my lovely friend Yasmin, and Yasmin is the owner of Ayurveda. Ayurveda is just wonderful. She has some fantastic Ayurvedic products. So all of our facials, we use the Ayurveda products. It's all natural. It's all made under Ayurvedic principles. And then you can see my lovely partner in crime, my husband Zelko, my business partner as well, who really helped to create the foundations of Aligning Health, not only by supporting me, but also by physically building the property. I take my hat off to him as well. That's a little bit of our team. Our team's grown since then, actually, but this is our core foundation. Okay. And sometimes I get a bit tricky with the slides. So what do we do at Aligning Health? Our mission is to help others to be healthy naturally. There's so many different modalities. Often when I'm doing Ayurvedic consults for people, we might have gone through a keto type diet. We might have gone through a vegan type diet. There is not a one size fits all. And when there's so many different ways, people can get a little bit lost. It can be that a little bit daunting. So we want to encourage people to learn about themselves. And in that way, you can start to put in some practices that can help you to be healthy naturally. So really, at the end of the day, it's all about you. So how do we do this? I said before, it's always about the how. What do you do? How do you do it? This is that really empowering approach. We have accommodation on site. I said that my husband, Zelko, has helped me build the accommodation, literally. So we have a health retreat. You can come here. If you want to have a cup of coffee, you have a cup of coffee. If you want some downtime and you want to detox off coffee, you can detox off coffee. One of the things that we really work on is working where that person is. So we call this a client-based practice or a person-centered based practice. The timing has to be right for you. If it's not right for you, it's not going to work. And Ayurveda is so powerful, and Ayurveda with yoga is so powerful that sometimes it's better just to do little bits of a practice rather than doing everything at once, making it overwhelming. So you can see, when I can see my photo here, oh, pardon me, we've got I'm just going to stop share for a minute. We've got our retreat behind us. We've got, pardon me, specialized body therapies. So we've got that beautiful light. If I move my body a little bit, you can see that lovely table. That's called a droni. And that droni allows us to do some absolutely wonderful treatments that are a little bit unheard of in the Western context. So things like Shirodhara, things like Udwantanam, even our massage we call Abhyanga. It's about using specialized oils to really help to work out what is that core root. Remember, this is one of the aims that we wanted to talk about today. How do we identify that core root of the problem? We definitely look at nutrition. We look at diet. So Ayurveda works with the understanding that what you put into your body, you become. And so you want to not only eat good food, but know that you're digesting good food. So we talk about ways that you can check with your digestive fire. We do yoga. We've got this beautiful treatment room and also a yoga room where everything looks out to the paddocks. So you can kind of see in this photo down here, we've tried to make it as natural as we possibly can. And one of the reasons that we've done that is so that we can understand what's out here is going to have certain qualities. And what we want to do is to counteract those qualities within us. I'll give you an example. So it looks like when this photo was taken, it looks like the grass was pretty green. I'm in Bendigo, mind you, in central Victoria. So in winter, it can be freezing. So when it's really cold and when it's really wet, we want to look at those qualities and change it around. So we change it around in our treatment room. We change it around in our yoga space. We change it around in our diet. We can change it around in our herbs if we want to look at herbal recommendations. We're using the idea that like increases like. So one of the reasons that the property is built the way it is that everything tries to face outward. And it gives us a really beautiful reminder. So people come for overnight stays. They come for health retreats. We're actually really busy at the moment with Melbourne opening up and people needing that little bit of a break. Or we do training. We talk about yoga. We talk about Ayurveda. And this is a huge passion. We've got at the moment some scholarships for next year. So we're offering a dual qualification in yoga and Ayurveda. These are nationally accredited qualifications. We've got on offer, we've got our first intake coming up in July for the advanced diploma of Ayurveda. And Dr. Pratibha is a leader in this particular one. And then the idea of aligning health is about bringing it all together. This is what the centre is. This is what Aligning Health Retreat and Day Spa is all about. So we've got some student dorm accommodation on site. So our students come from all over Australia and they spend days with us when there's no COVID. And Dr. Pratibha comes out from India when there's no COVID. And we invite members of the public to come and experience what yoga and Ayurveda really is. So we've got our accommodation, that's our guest accommodation. It's private accommodation, it's got en suites, we've got a shared space. So we cook for our guests, we do a diagnostic for our guests, we do body therapies for our guests. And in that way, not only do our guests get the benefits of learning about yoga and Ayurveda, and we have morning yoga classes, but our students get to practice on real people. And this is what Ayurveda is all about. It's about that applied knowledge in the Western context, in this context. A little bit about aligning health. So now what is Ayurveda? Can you say Ayurveda? Have you learnt to say Ayurveda yet? So in a nutshell, Ayurveda can be looked at as either 5,000 years old or 10,000 years old. And it really depends what text you're looking at. So one of the things that we teach in Aligning Health is go back and look at the traditional texts. So I'm asked a lot, what is the proper way of doing Ayurveda? Is Ayurveda vegan? Is it vegetarian? What sort of oil is good in Ayurveda? Go back and look at the traditional texts. Because very much like yoga, Ayurveda has had bits taken out of it and it's been twisted and tweaked and it can become a little bit lost. So whenever you're in doubt, go back and look at the traditional texts of the Ashtanga Haridram or the Charaka Samhita. And this is where we base all of our training on. So if we look traditionally at Ayurveda, it first comes in the Atharva Vedas, so it's written in the traditional sciences. So Aya meaning life and Veda meaning knowledge. So it's found in the traditional sciences. It's based on the idea in body system of keeping the body in a system using diet, herbal treatment, and yogic breathing. Ayurveda is an alternative, or I like to say complementary system of medicine that has its roots in Indian subcontinent. And the word of Ayurveda, like I just said, we can break it into two. We can look at Ayur meaning life, and we can look at Veda as being knowledge. So together, when we're starting to understand Ayurveda, we have the science of life. And I'll just get you to check that all the microphones are turned off, that you've turned your microphone off. Okay. I studied psychology back in, when I left school. And I've actually enrolled in my bachelor degree in psychology to next year. I'm fascinated by the mind. And I'm fascinated by what makes us tick, what makes us choose. For me, this is psychology. Why, if I've got a beautiful plate of food in front of me, what makes me go for either savory or sweet? What is it that's in me? And why does the person next to me go for the opposite? And we can make it even more interesting when we think about a family. Well, you know, I'm a mum, I've got 3 kids. I try and raise them, dare I say, as equally as I can. I don't know if that's even possible, but I try and give them a little bit of equal time. But why is it that my son has a savory tooth and my daughter has a sweet tooth? What is it that's naturally inherent with them, and why are they making these particular choices? We can understand a little bit of this with Western psychology and Eastern psychology. Let's look at the base. So this is Maslow's hierarchy. I find Maslow's hierarchy really easy to understand. It's good at a glance. I love visuals. We teach a lot with visuals at Aligning Health. Lots of videos, lots of visuals to really make it concrete. Okay, so we look at our basic levels of need. We need food, we need sleep, and we need water. And if we look at Maslow as well, we might say we need a little bit of shelter there, and we need a little bit of safety, and we need some warmth. Now, if we don't have these basic needs met, it is impossible to reach up towards that realm of self-realization or self-actualization. And if we look at the understanding of yoga, this is where we're trying to get to. We have this intention of samadhi, this intention of connecting with the whole. I'm going to go back to the beginning. From the physiological level, we need food, shelter, warmth, sleep. Okay. Now I'm going to break it down a little bit again. We need food that we can digest. We've got Christmas coming. Christmas brings about so many different challenges, both from the family, social, mental health perspective, and also from the physical food perspective. We are just inundated with things that are indulgent, or my family is anyway. Ayurveda looks at nutrition, and it looks at nutrition a little bit differently. And it says that in order for your body to have optimal health, you need to choose food that is appropriate for your body and your mind type, for it to be broken down and for it to be properly metabolized and to become part of you. Okay. So does that mean you have to have organic food? No. It means that you need to be able to have food that you can properly digest. If you're eating food that is not properly digestible, then it's going to stick somewhere in the body. And eventually in time, it's going to change our digestive capacity. And in Agni, we've got two words. We've got the word, in Ayurveda, we've got the two words. We've got the word Agni, which looks at our digestive fire. So think about your body's ability to actually break food down. And then we think about the word Ama. And Ama is about toxin that starts to build up in the body. And this is going to happen over a long period of time. So if we're trying to get to that end point of self-realization, self-actualization, but we've got food in the body that's not being properly digested, that our cells aren't recognizing for our body type, we've kind of got a little bit of an issue happening here already. We'll go more about that in a little while. The other thing is about sleep. Ayurveda talks about 4 pillars of health: food, elimination, sleep, and breathing. If we're not getting proper nourishment, our sleep's going to be affected, our breathing's going to be affected. So we want to work on that base level. Often I'll say to people, you know, I could prescribe you lots of herbal medicine, but there's no point in me prescribing you herbal medicine if your baseline isn't operational. We want to get to that proper baseline, then to be able to work up through Maslow's hierarchy. So we've still got that connection between Eastern and Western, but what is that motivating factor? Why are we leaning towards that? And what are the responses going to be? What are my choices going to be? This is that life knowledge. Once you start to know the effects of your choices, it is really empowering. This is Ayurveda, Ayurveda in a nutshell. Okay, I'm going to give you some words. I told you it's going to be top heavy from the beginning. Okay, so some key words in Ayurveda. Panchamabhutas. I'm going to break it down. Pancha meaning there's five elements. So really similar to Chinese medicine. I think Chinese medicine's been known and been around for a little bit longer than Ayurveda in our society. So Chinese medicine works on elements. Ayurveda works on elements. Ayurveda says in the beginning, there was nothing. There was just space. And sometimes you might see a book saying ether. Sometimes you might see a book saying space. It's just a vastness. And if I ask you to think about words that describe space, what would you say? Maybe you put it in the chat for me. How would you describe space? It's one of the first things that come to mind when you think about the word space. Open. Oh, absolutely. There's lots of openness and it allows for lots of movement. Absolutely. Thanks, Joanne. What colour is space? What is the temperature of space? Where do you find space in everyday life? If your mind is really busy, there's no space. We need a little bit of space, but not too much space. We need to find balance. So we could say that in the beginning, there was just space. It just was. And then there started to be a little bit of movement. And this is the air. And that air started to create a little bit of friction. And that friction caused heat. And this is the development of fire. And then that fire started to cause condensation. And this is the development of water. And then that water started to cause solid. And this solid mass we're going to call earth. So we can talk about creation from an Ayurvedic perspective. And we have all of these elements within our body. If I say the word lemon to you, lemon, and if I ask you to run a lemon, imagine a lemon between your tongue, between your lips, and run your tongue over your teeth. Oh, it's happening to me. What's happening in your mouth? What do you notice? What's happening in your mouth? Write me in the chat. We've got a quiet group of people tonight. What's happening in your mouth if I say lemon? The smell of the lemon. You cut a lemon. Maybe you're starting to notice a little bit of moisture. Absolutely. Thank you, Sarah. A little bit of salivation starting to happen. A little bit of fire readiness. I'm ready to start to get food into my belly. Okay, good. So we can see that there's the water and the fire there. And if I touch your body, we've got solid mass. If I touch the top of my thighs, I've got solid mass. I have earth, that solid structure. And in my body, there's lots of space. And there's space for fluid to travel through. There's space for the blood to travel through. There's space for air and oxygen to travel through. I have space. And I can sometimes feel the air on my skin. We have all of these elements within our body. And the combination of these particular elements, we're going to call the dosha. So often when I'm talking with people, they say, Ayurveda, dosha. What's my dosha? This is maybe one of the cornerstones of Ayurvedic knowledge in the Western world. So our dosha are our unique genetic makeup of a combination of these elements. This is why my son will go for savory and my daughter will go for sweet. This is why you'll find a set of twins that have a different response. We can start to understand and make predictions when we start to understand our basic genetic constitution, our dosha. Our gunas, so again, this is shared with yoga. Our gunas is our state of mind. So we can have a state of mind where we're in a state of bliss, a state of calm. And we might call this sattvic state. Or we can have a state of mind where there's lots of movement, there's lots of stimulation. At the moment, I don't think it's possible to be in a sattvic state because I'm giving you information and you're processing this. So you might be in a rajasic state. Or just say you really wanted to come, but it just got too hard and too heavy and you got home from work and you just needed to sit. There is no judgment whatsoever. But this need to just sit might be a very tamasic state. I'm going to talk about this more later as well. So not only do we have these elements, and not only do we have this combination of elements that's unique for us, we also have this state of mind. And I said this A word before, this idea of the agni, this idea of our personal digestive fire. And then we have some morning routines, we have some evening routines, we have some seasonal routines, but the whole idea is to connect the body, the mind, and the spirit. And if we look at yoga and I think about the triangle, the body, the mind, and the spirit, and I think about that union of the body and the mind and the spirit. And together, yoga and Ayurveda gives us tools to start to connect with that body, that mind, and that spirit. And so at the end of the day, really, we are just one small part of this whole. And we have this whole within us. We are part of the universe. We have all of the elements of the universe within us. So how does this then work with yoga? Because we know that there's yoga and there's different ways of practicing yoga, and there might be a yin yoga, there might be an Iyengar yoga, there might be a Bikram yoga. What else? There might be an Ashtanga yoga. There might be a different style of yoga. These are all styles of yoga. And even now, a lot of people are surprised that yoga is more than just the physical practice. Yoga is more than just the asana. If we look at just the asana, we're missing so much more. We're missing the idea of how to live with ourselves, how to live with others, how to really work with that sensory experience without the mind that's kicking in, how to work with the breath. Totally, the 8 limbs, totally. And when we understand the connection of yoga with Ayurveda, we can understand that the very first subdosha of Vata is prana. And we know pranayam. Pranayam is about working with breath. There's something behind the breath. There's that life force. So one of the limbs of yoga is pranayam, the connection there. So we start to look at more than just that physical side of yoga. And it can really start to change. One of the things that we do in our Ayurvedic yoga teacher training is to be able to teach our students how to teach a group of yoga students individually within a group-based context. And there are many ways that we can go about this. And one of the things that we teach our yoga students is how to provide an individual therapeutic approach to yoga. This is that personalized practice, and Ayurveda gives us that framework. It gives us that diagnostic ability to be able to work with this. It gives us ways that we can start to address the core root of problems. I'll give you an example. I remember when I was living down in Melbourne, and I'd be working in Dandenong, and I was working in youth work at that stage. So it was, if you can imagine youth work, it's pretty high pressure. And then I would hit the Monash. Hitting the Monash at 5 o'clock, the Monash freeway, do I even need to say this to anyone? Think of a freeway at 5 o'clock after work, after dealing with young people all day. Okay, think about my mind. Think about my state of mind. Am I going to be calm? Am I going to have lots of movement and aggravation? Or am I just going to be empty and tamasic? I don't know. Okay, so I'm going to drive to a yoga class. I just make it. I walk in. Okay, give me yoga. You know, I can use that in my yoga class to teach from that point of view. One of the things that we teach at Aligning Health is to work with the individual, to work with the student at where they are at. Then it becomes a life-based practice. This is one of the things I said at the very, very beginning. If someone's coming into your yoga class and they're a little bit frantic, what's the first thing you need to do? What would you do, even if you're not a yoga teacher? Someone comes in, there's lots of movement, there's lots of that air and space around them. What would you do? What would you want to do with them?
Calm them down.
Totally calm them down. Thank you. Yeah. Lie on the ground, put your feet up, watch your breath, work with the prana. Absolutely. Get them to sit and breathe. Stop. Really good. You're addressing some of the core roots of what's going on. Then we can start to get into yoga. This is the applied Ayurveda and yoga. Amazing. Good on you. Okay. So we're using here our intervention of calming them down, getting them to sit, getting them to breathe, to address the qualities of what's going on around them. And qualities, these are my adjectives. So I said there's movement, there's energy, there's air and space. So we're trying to work on the opposite. We're trying to stop. We're trying to just sit. We're trying to put a heavy quality there because the qualities of movement are light. You're up, you're ready to go. We want to take it the opposite way. So this is an intervention based on the core root and to address the qualities. And what I'm going to do with one person is not necessarily what I'm going to do with another person. So it changes because one size doesn't fit all. So I cannot say in Ayurveda, everyone should have ghee. Ghee is really, really good. And I cannot say in Ayurveda, everyone should have ginger. Ginger is really, really good. And I cannot say in Ayurveda, everyone should massage with black unroasted sesame oil, because it has to be different for every individual. Yes, please, everybody have ghee, absolutely. However, the quantity of ghee and the way that you take the ghee, so if you're not sure of what ghee is an unsalted butter that's been heated and starts to change its consistency and actually its qualities. Ghee is really, really good for the digestive system. It's good for that digestive fire, the agni that I've been talking about before. It's good for a mind that is just racing. It's got some sattvic calming type qualities. And we can make medicated ghee. I've got a medicated ghee, for example. So we can use the ghee as a traveler to take Ayurvedic medicine, herbs into the body. However, the way we use it is going to be different. So if I look at, and the picture's not really describing it too much, if I look at this picture here, a kapha person generally maybe a little bit heavier, maybe a little bit more bigger lips, bigger eyes. They've already got that earth and that water within them. They don't need as much ghee. They still need it, but they don't need as much ghee. And then if I look at the pitta type person, I'm thinking of ginger now. If I said ginger, fresh ginger, what comes to mind? What taste comes to mind? Fresh ginger. If I asked you to eat some fresh grated ginger, what would be the effect in your mouth? Can you write it in the chat for me? What would be the effect of fresh grated ginger in your mouth? Would it be pleasant? Hot? Helen says that it's hot. Pungent? Okay, we've got two really, really good words there. Hot is a great way to describe it. This is a great quality. And Joanne says pungent. Pungent is one of our tastes. And Vanessa talks about spicy. And Jodie, I laughed because you've got lemony heat there, lemon and ginger together. I'm wondering if you're on that line with me. So all of the dosha can definitely have ginger, definitely. But it's the way that you're going to have it which makes it unique and which makes it special. And this is why it's not one size fits all. So it's hot. It's got a hot energy and it's got a pungent, but it's also sweet. And it's also really good for the digestive system. It's good to get that, the saliva to start to stimulate. It's good to scrape some of the toxin from the cells in the body. And fresh ginger is not as pungent as dry ginger powder. And dry ginger powder in milk that's boiled is going to change the quality of the heavy, sticky type quality of milk. And so it's not one size fits all. It's going to be different depending on where you're at. And I'm going to think about Vata now. So Ayurveda talks about Abhyanga, self-massage or massage therapy, if you like. In Abhyanga, I've heard it said that you can use a coconut oil for Abhyanga, for self-massage. A coconut oil, if I think about coconut, what are some of those qualities? What are some of those adjectives that come to mind when you think about coconut? Think about coconut. Totally. It's cooling. It's cooling. Absolutely. Cooling. It can be heavy. Yeah. It's got sweet taste. Yep. So you're talking about the energy of the coconut is cooling. And some of the qualities is that it's heavy. And we could say it's very, very sattvic if you're understanding what sattvic is. Now, if I'm going to ask someone that's already got lots of air and space, and they might have a little bit of maybe, let's say, constipation, they might have a little bit of anxiety. I'm just being very, very general for the sake of tonight. They might have maybe a little bit of arthritis, lots of movement, uncertainty, unpredictability. And if I ask them then to start to massage in a cold climate with coconut oil, I'm going to increase that coolness that's already there. So I want to change it around. However, if I'm giving that same oil to someone that's got a pitta type constitution, someone that's going through menopause and experiencing the hot flushes and it's really, really uncomfortable, then that might work really well for them. A yoga practice that is really cooling and calming, maybe some twists, maybe some of the Shatali breath, the pranayama, might be really good for a pitta type person, but not so good for a vata type person. So here we're looking at the applied knowledge of Ayurveda in a yoga practice. So we've got a personalized practice based on a little bit of our Ayurvedic diagnosis to try and address core root of issues. In that way, again, we're supporting the mind and the body and the spirit, and we're just supporting that interaction of the self in nature, that life knowledge, that self-knowledge. Okay. So both yoga and Ayurveda accept the philosophy of the Samkhya theory. I'm not going to go into great detail because we could be here all night just looking at this. So we have this manifest, this unmanifest energy, if you like, and then we come into this manifestive energy. And you can start to see within this yoga and Ayurveda philosophy, there's yoga words and there's Ayurveda words. We can see the elements. We talked before about the Panchamabhutas, the space, air, fire, water, and earth. We know about the dosha. How do we interact with our world? I've got some yogis with me tonight, haven't I? How do you interact with your world? We can link these organs with these senses, with these elements. So we make sense of our world through our sense experience. And we could think about this as pratyahara if we want to. So if we're finding that the eyes, the sight is really sharp and the eyes are red and there's a burning there, I know that fire is the element that is responsible for sight and the organ of the eyes, so I can provide intervention. Or if I'm finding that in my examination that the client's describing a post-nasal drip, you'd be surprised at the number of people that talk about post-nasal drips. It must be so uncomfortable. Post-nasal drips being fluid at the back behind the nose. Fluid is water. There's that earthy water, sticky type element there. So I can do some intervention that's based around that. So again, we can start to apply our knowledge to help to address what's going on. All right. Okay. I'm going to ask you to do your own little checklist for me. We're exploring practical ways to understand ourselves. We need to know ourselves first. It's like when you get in the airplane, you've got to be able to put the mask to yourself first before you can really support other people around you. So from 1 to 5, if you've got a pen handy, I'm going to ask you to rate from 1 to 5. 1 being, yeah, not so good. 5 being really good. What is your breathing like? 1 to 5. What is your sleep like? 1 to 5. What is your diet like? 1 to 5. 1 being 5 being excellent. What is your elimination like? And from here, you can start to get a little bit of a picture, a little bit of an insight into your mind and into your body. This is your own diagnostic to start to understand yourself. And it can be a really good tool to check in with maybe in a week. Has it changed? What are the things that you've done to make it change? So in a yoga therapy class, I might ask about the breath. I might watch the breath. I might notice sleep patterns. I might ask about diet. I might ask about elimination. All of this is going to give me a picture of how the mind and the body are starting to interact together. Okay. So this is not new. Like I said before, Ayurveda has been around, 5,000 to 10,000 years, depending on what type of text that you decide to read. So interestingly enough, the World Health Organization has done a definition of what health is. So they say that health is a complete physical. So we've got the body, mental, the mind, and social, that connectedness, well-being. Not only the absence of disease. I know that we've had a really tough time with COVID at the moment. Some people have thrived. I'm down in Victoria. Some people have thrived. Some people have struggled. We want to be able to be connected with others. We want to be able to have good mental health and good physical health. And if we look at this connection all of the time, it becomes a lot easier than having to address an issue when it starts to come up in the body or in the mind. So we can say from here that Ayurveda is a preventative-based model of healthcare. Absolutely, it can provide intervention and supports when something has become symptomatic. Absolutely, it can provide support when there's something that's been quite chronic in the body and in the mind. However, it's not a quick fix. And Ayurveda and yoga are lifestyles. And you are your own best healer and you are your own best teacher. So my job as an Ayurvedic practitioner and as a yoga teacher is to provide you as much education to be able to make the choices that help support you on your journey of health. Okay, so what causes these imbalances? I said before that we have within us space, air, fire, water, and earth. And we're born with this ratio. It does not change. You cannot suddenly become Pitta Kapha if you're Kapha Pitta. It just doesn't change. This is your natural constitution. However, the ratio of that will change. So we have these couple of words. We have this natural constitution, and then we have our current state of balance. And our natural intelligence. Our body doesn't necessarily know what to do with a processed hamburger. Our cells don't always recognize it as nutritious. It doesn't know how to break that down. So our diet, lots of processed food. When we have a diet that's high in processed food, it blocks our body's natural intelligence of what to do with that food. What salivary juices, what acids do we need to break down that food? We put food combinations like bananas and milk together, and we need different digestive acids to be able to break that down. Over time, this is going to cause complications in the body. Once or twice, it's okay. But when it starts to happen a lot of the time, then you're going to come into imbalance. Our thoughts. That word mindfulness, it's such a buzzword at the moment, but it is so true. Our thoughts, we are what we think, we are what we eat, we are what we digest. We need to be able to digest our thoughts at the same time. Things like muscle memory, kinesiology, maybe it's got some really good validity there. I'm a big fan of kinesiology. Our thoughts help shape us, and our thoughts can help make predictions for us. Are our thoughts calm and clear and pure, or our thoughts aggressive, or are our thoughts really negative? This is that sattvic, rajasic, tamasic. This is the gunas of the mind. Our lifestyle. I know I'm married to a teacher, and I'm also a teacher as well. And I know in the school holidays, it's really challenging. I know during COVID lockdown, it was challenging. Our lifestyle becomes erratic. And daylight savings, we turn the clocks back. So it means we get extra light. It means our digestive fire, we're going to eat at different times, and our digestive fire is naturally just a little bit off tap throughout the whole of summer in Victoria. Our lifestyle wants to work with the natural circadian rhythm around us. We want to go to bed at the same time, get up at the same time. It's really challenging around the Christmas holidays. It's really challenging around COVID. We want to be able to make sure that we're eating breakfast at the same time, lunch at the same time, dinner at the same time. So then our body knows when it's receiving food. There are some daily routines that we want to be doing. This is our lifestyle. Things like getting up in the morning, we'll talk about this soon, tongue scraping, doing our self-abhyanga, doing some yoga, doing some meditation, the way that we go to bed at nights, turning the phones and the TV off before we go to bed, all those electronics. This is our lifestyle. And our lifestyle can go whack out of balance. When you're multitasking, when you've got one thing, the other thing, you're trying to fit all these different things in before Christmas because for some reason at Christmas, things just have to be the way that they are. It's really, really aggravating. It's stressful. This is called vata. There's so much movement. There's so much pressure. There might be a bit of pitta there too. So things go out of balance, and that those scales start to go out of balance. But we often don't recognize that. There's this idea called the worried well, where we're just a little bit off balance. We're just feeling a little bit anxious. Breathing might be a little bit blocked, but we're not recognizing it as a disease. And often in Western medicine, we're not recognizing it as a disease until we've gone through stage 4, according to Ayurvedic medicine. And then it starts to get a little bit tricky to be able to bring those scales back. We can look at family history. And when I teach, for those of you that are going to study with us this year, next year now, you're going to hear me say this. If you've got a family history that's got a genetic predisposition with diabetes and with a sedentary lifestyle and depression, and then you're looking at your genetic makeup and you have a very sedentary lifestyle and you like lots of sweets and you got a high sweet taste diet, you're already on that path towards diabetes. So how do you start to change that? Look at your diet, look at your thoughts, look at your lifestyle. We look at the qualities. We've had some really good qualities that have come up in our words. Spicy, heat, heavy. Look at the qualities, change it. Like increases like, and I'll talk more about that soon. Pollutants, sometimes we have control, sometimes we don't have control. And stress. Our natural intelligence can get blocked by stress, and we know that. I think we're knowing that even more and more as time's going on. It's too much. It's on overload. We talk about diet, white, refined, processed. Our body doesn't know what to do with it. That food is going to have reduced prana. It's going to have reduced life energy. Our body is not going to recognize it, and it starts to block our body's natural intelligence. Now, if we look at this, it's sweet. We need sweet. We really need sweet. One of our 6 tastes. However, the way that we get our sweet is a bit different. So when I do baking, I love baking. When I do baking, I use a whole wheat flour. I'll use ghee. I'll use something called jaggery or maybe a maple syrup. So I'm using still similar things, but they're not processed. So I'm trying to get rid of those processed bleached whites that really have protein value. Or if I'm really craving something sweet, I'll look at pumpkin or corn, maybe some oats, maybe some milk, ghee. Ghee's cooling. Ginger's got a sweet aftertaste as well. Cardamom, a little bit of cinnamon, maybe a chai tea. Sounds good to me right now. So we said before with the World Health Organization that we want to be able to put things in place as a preventative-based model. So instead of being reactionary, we want to put things in place so we don't actually need to do much, and it becomes lifestyle, Ayurveda, life knowledge. So one of the things that I like to do with clients when I'm working at it with clients from a yoga and an Ayurvedic perspective is to work out what is possible for you. What is the most pressing thing that you can do right now? And yes, we'll work with all of these, but right now, what have you got power over? What do you feel that is achievable for you? Let's just work on that first, and then we'll start to build on that. What could you do right now? So thinking about your life and going back to where you rated those 4 pillars, the sleep, the breathing, the diet, and the elimination. Think about what score you gave, 1 to 5. Think about what you could do right now. What's within your control right now? And maybe break it down a little bit more. Is there something that you could do 3 days a week? Just 3 days a week for 2 weeks. Just get that into place. And then the rest will follow. Just one thing at a time. Structure, structure, structure. This is the lifestyle. Because we can't carry this. Because it's going to come out somewhere. And Ayurveda often says that most diseases have a stress-based cause. Stress on the ability for the mind to be able to properly digest food, or stress from the mind. Okay. So we're looking at now an understanding of what it means to look for the core root, how you can be your own therapist. I saw a post put up the other day. Go to my website and have a look at my online quiz, and it'll tell you what your dosha is. And I cringed. As an Ayurvedic practitioner and teacher, I completely cringed, because you cannot do an online quiz to be able to work out what your dosha is. There's a whole lot of different things that we want to look at when we're looking at our prakriti. And our prakriti is our natural constitution. So this is that combination of the earth and the water, of the space and the air, of the fire within the body. Some are going to have a little bit more vata and less pitta naturally. Some are going to have a whole lot less kapha and a whole lot more pitta, maybe naturally. And generally, we'd have two that are around about the same and one that's a little bit lower, or you might have all three even. It depends on what your genetic predisposition is. But when we start to know what this is, then we can start to make choices. And the question above, how do you work with the kapha and the vata without imbalancing vata? We look for the similarities. Okay. We are all unique. We are all individual. It makes it really tricky when you're looking at it from a Western-based approach of healthcare. I know in my time, if you look at my history, I've seen many dietitians and it didn't work for me because I'm unique and I'm individual, but Ayurveda really resonated with me. I think I was that little black duckling in the middle. You need to understand what the qualities are within you to be able to work with what's with you. I can't sit here and say, this is how you treat this particular disease, because I need to look at a lot of different factors before I come to a conclusion that this is what it is for you. And this is when it's really empowering. So I've said the word prakriti a few times. This is that basic constitution. And you're born with this. It's not going to change. However, there's a word here called vikriti. And this is that current state. So if we go back, we think about those scales. We've got the diet and the lifestyle and the levels of stress and the pollutants. All of these things may cause an imbalance, a state of imbalance between your natural constitution and where you are right now. And this is what we want to start to bring it up towards. Our business is called Aligning Health, and we deliberately chose aligning health because I don't know if you can ever be fully aligned. I don't know if that's possible. Unless you're living in an ashram and you've got someone that's completely cooking for you and completely looking after you. But even then, I don't know if it's really possible because we're subjected to the fluctuations in the time of the day. You know, the sun's higher at midday and it's lower. So these dosha, there's going to be more movement in the afternoon. There's going to be, that's vata. There's going to be more pitta in the middle of the day. There's movement. So we're trying to bring some rebalance, but not completely balanced. Okay, but our first point is to work out what is our natural constitution and where is that state of imbalance. And the tricky thing about doing an online quiz is that often the person that's doing the online quiz isn't really sure of, or they're not instructed to look at your current state or your natural state. And so you can throw yourself further off. So it's really not advisable. We can also talk about the kavagunya or the genetic weak spot of a participant. So in here, I said before about the idea that if mum and dad have a history of depression and diabetes, and grandma and grandpa have had a history of depression and diabetes, and then you have that already, that weak spot there. I'm looking for patterns now, these pieces of the puzzle. So if you have a diet that's high in sweet taste and you're quite sedentary, I can make an educated assumption that if you continue along that lifestyle and if you continue along that diet based on your natural genetic constitution, you may be heading down towards a path of diabetes. We want to make an assessment of the state of the mind. This is the triguna. Where are you at? What is the level of calmness in your mind? What is the level of agitation within your mind? What is the level of suppression in the mind? because you can't work with someone giving them a whole lot of things to do if they're already in that level of inertia. It's just too hard. You need to be able to respect where is that person at in their state of mind. And from there, we look at the anatomical and physiological assessment. Okay, so what can we do to be our own therapist? I'm going to give you a couple of different ideas. First thing, I asked you about your breathing. I asked you about rating your breathing, rating your sleeping, rating your diet and your elimination. Keep a diary. Have a look. Watch. Go back in a week. Have a look. Have a look at your bowel motion. Is it too dry? Is it crampy? Is it bloaty? This might be too much, maybe air and space. Is it really hard to get to sleep? Is the sleep part of me? And do you wake up? Are you a little bit agitated? Or is your breathing really shallow and really quick? Maybe there's a bit of air and space around. Or are you noticing that, oh my gosh, things are just ripping through you? You're just not digesting it. It's a little bit runny. It's a little bit burny. Are you noticing that your sleep, in your sleep, are you dreaming really vivid dreams? Are they quite aggressive dreams? Is your breathing quite held and tense? These are all things that you can start to notice. So you're starting to become your own therapist. Okay, so we come to some, I told you it was going to be top heavy. Now we're starting to come to some practical elements. In the morning, I talked about the idea of dinacharya, lifestyle. One of the things that you can do in the morning is look at your tongue. Have a look at your tongue. Is it cracked? Is it dry? Are there lines? Is there a lack of moisture? Is it dry? Or are you noticing that there's movement? Have a look. Has it got a coating over it? If it's got a coating over it, you want to remove that coating. We don't want to re-ingest it. So we're looking at our oral health. We're also looking at our digestive health. And we can also get a little bit of a picture. What is our digestive capacity like just by looking at our tongue? So one of the things that we can do every day is to get a tongue scraper. So it looks like this. And this is my demonstration silver one. And I would always, my tongue scraper is copper because it's got good antibacterial properties in it. And you're going to take your tongue scraper, you're going to have a look at your tongue, and then you're going to take your tongue scraper and run it along the top of the tongue, give it a wash along the side of the tongue, give it a wash the other side of the tongue, give it a wash, and then twice down the middle, give it a wash. Tongue scraping every morning on waking. So if we go back to that picture that I had before about those 7 different images, what is it that you can do? And there's so much that I can recommend as a yoga and Ayurvedic practitioner. Okay, one thing. Can you scrape your tongue every morning? Can you look at your tongue every morning and can you scrape your tongue? 2 minutes. That's all I want you to do for a week. Have a go. Do you think it's achievable? Could you do that? Yes? No? Maybe? Maybe it resonates with you. Maybe it doesn't. Try it. Try what it's like to scrape your tongue every day. Joanne says, it's amazing how different your tongue looks after it's been scraped for a while. Joanne, I really agree. And Ayurveda needs to be applied practice. And when you don't scrape your tongue after you've been doing it for a while, it feels like you haven't brushed your teeth. It just feels banky. And all you're doing is scraping the toxin from the tongue. Completely easy, completely empowering. However, and this is client-centered practice. If this isn't cutting it for you, maybe you're the type that would prefer to keep a diary and do a bit of self-analysis and look at your bowel motions. Maybe this is where you're at. You're your own therapist. This is going to give you clues as to your current state of health, your current state of balance in your mind and your body and your spirit. Thanks for sharing, Joanne. So I've talked before about the gunas. I've said the gunas a couple of times now. So we have this idea of sattvic white purity. We have this idea of foods that are just even, foods that are white, but I'm not talking about refined white, foods that aren't going to stimulate or aggravate. And then we have this idea of rajasic energy. It's high pressure energy, controlling energy. It's stimulating. Things like caffeine, things like fried foods, things like meat, they're stimulating for the mind and the body. And then we have this idea of just this state of inertia, this state of depression, if you like, of things that are putrid, things that are rotten, things that aren't going to give us this high energy of prana. And these are not solid. We can move through these. So I've said that our state of our prakriti is solid. It's not going to change our natural constitution. The balance of it will change, but our natural constitution won't change. But we can move through sattva, rajas, and tamas. So when you saw this come up, you saw my email, there was some movement there. Yes, I'm going to do that. Yes, I might be excited, or I might be determined. I might be controlled. I've got it in my Google calendars. I'm going to come. Okay. Now, when you're here, you might find just a little bit of, I'm hoping, a little bit of pleasure or a little bit of positive information that you might be able to use in practice. Okay, good. You got a bit of clarity. And then there's something that's holding you here. This can be that tamasic energy. It's holding you. You haven't switched off. I hope you haven't gone away. You haven't switched off. So you're seeing it to the end. So there's connotations that sattva is the best, that tamas is the worst. However, we can understand how the mind works. And this is that beautiful psychology of both yoga and Ayurveda together. We work with that calm, clear, clarity state of sattva. We can work with this. We can work with this need for investigation, for that stimulation, for regulation, this rajasic energy, and we can work with this holding energy. We want to have them in a healthy state, in the state of our mind. Okay, so where do you relate? Just take a minute, have a look through. Where do you relate? And while you're reading through your words, are you relating there all the time? Or does it kind of ebb and flow a little bit? And while you're reading through the words, when you rewatch this, you might like to pause this part. What makes it more rajasic? And what changes to make it more sattvic? And how does that tamasic element affect you? Start to understand how you respond to these words. All right, let's do a little bit of a recap. Okay, so we've got about 40 minutes left. Let's see where we are. Do you feel like you have an understanding of what Ayurveda means? And do you understand some of the methods that you might use to investigate the own health of your mind and your body? And if you've got any questions, thank you. I'm happy to answer them. So this is about you. This is about you being able to apply some of these theories into your life in a practical way. Okay. So now let's learn some more of those practical ways. You might have a look at some yoga, some life coaching, and do a little bit of exploring. I talked about these words before, these adjectives or these qualities. And we can start to categorize these qualities into our dosha, into our vata and our pitta and a kapha. And the question that I had at the very beginning, how do you work with vata and kapha without aggravating vata? So I'm going to answer this very generally because now I hope that you understand that we would look for what is going on from a genetic predisposition, what is going on from the point of the natural constitution or the prakriti, and what is it that has led to that state of imbalance. So it's hard to do that one size fits all, but we'll do a general overview. Okay, I'm going to look at all of the qualities of vata. It's dry, light, cold, rough, subtle, mobile, clear. Okay, all right, I've got an idea. I've got an idea that if I go and stand at the top of Cradle Mountain in Tasmania, which I have done in the cold, and put my arms out, it's going to be really windy. And this wind is going to be really drying and really aggravating and light and rough and mobile and clear on my skin. And my skin is going to end up rough and dry. Okay, and it's cold. Okay, let's have a look at kapha. Now it's heavy. Okay. If I'm at Cradle Mountain, is it going to be heavy? No, it's light. And my jacket's going to flip everywhere and it's going to move from side to side. There's no heaviness there whatsoever. Okay. Is it slow? Is the wind up in Cradle Mountain slow? Maybe, but then maybe it's fast and maybe it's a little bit changeable. Don't know. Is it, I'm going to skip this. Is it oily? It's dry. My skin is dry afterwards. Is it slimy? No. Is it dense? Is it solid? Is it heavy? No. Is it soft? No. My skin's rough. Okay, I have a word here that is similar. It's cold. I'm going to treat this imbalance with warmth because I'm working on the idea of like increases like, I'm working the idea of opposite. So I find some of the commonalities that exist between vata and kapha. And if I want to work from that perspective, my commonality here is cold. So I'm going to put in warmth. It's going to be warm food. It's going to be a warm yoga practice. It's going to be a warm massage oil that's got warm qualities in. It's going to be maybe putting a pair of socks on at night and feeling that warmth of a blanket over my body. Does that help to explain it a little bit from a very overview? Yep. Okay. Then I can look at what are the qualities of pitta. So this is my heat. This is my one that's responsible for transformation. It's got some oily type qualities. Sharp, hot, light, mobile, liquid. Okay. So wherever I'm working, I want to work with the opposite to help to bring about a little bit of balance. Or I want to recognize what are the qualities, the attributes, the adjectives that are coming out strongly. So I can help to bring that back a little bit more into balance. So where are you sitting at the moment? Right now, where are you sitting? And this is non-diagnostic. I should do that disclaimer. Okay, so you might like to make a note of that. And now I'm going to ask you, think about the time when you are at your most healthiest. Where are you sitting then? And is it close? Or is it polar opposites? Just have a think. Where is your personal set of scales? Where is it at for you right now? So we have the idea of these qualities. Don't get confused about the word gunas. We have gunas in the state of the mind, and we have gunas in the qualities or the 10 opposing pairs. And I'll put the gunas there deliberately. If you read an Ayurvedic textbook, you'll see the gunas in relation to the mind, and you'll see the gunas in relation to the qualities. We're talking about same words, two different things, two different meanings. So I could ask you to go through and pinpoint where are you at right now? What are the words that are describing you right now? And then I could ask you to go through and work out what were the words that were describing you when you're at your most healthiest. And then you, as your own therapist, can go back and look at what are the qualities within Vata and Pitta and Kapha. And you can start to get a picture. And is this diagnostic? No. This is starting to give you a picture of where things are at for you. This can give you a picture of maybe the yoga poses that are really good for you at this time. This can give you a picture of maybe the pranayama that might be really good for you at this time. So if I look at, I've got this beautiful little dice that I found at Kmart. And when I teach kids yoga, I just love it. We roll the dice. So if I'm looking at asana, if I look at my chair pose, oh, it's a little bit tricky on camera. If I look at my chair pose, and you can do this if you want to, please, by all means, move yourself into chair pose. And when you're in chair pose, what are the words that you would use that describe this pose? How does it make you feel? And is it different to what's already around you? Or is it going to increase? Are you already sharp and hot? Maybe this isn't the particular pose for you. Maybe you need something like a child's pose that might have that heavy, soft type quality. Or if you're in, let's face it, one of the reasons that most people like to practice yoga, in this dice, it's called resting pose. However, let's do this first. What are the words that you would use to describe Shavasana, resting pose? Okay. Now, if you have lightness, coldness, subtleness, roughness, quickness, brittleness, this can be a really, really challenging pose because you're being told to stop. And when the body is stopping and the mind is also starting to stop, and there's already so much movement around, this can be pure near torture. So maybe something a little bit more like this, or maybe doing our resting pose with script, with dialogue, is going to be easier. So this is that application again, how to change your yoga, your personal yoga. Let's think about this in relation to food. And I like to use popcorn because I find it such an easy example. If I was going to look at popcorn, what are the words that you would use to describe popcorn? What would you choose from that list there? How would you describe popcorn? very changeable, isn't it? It's very dry. It's light. Yeah, great. Dry, light, rough. Good. I would too. That's a really excellent snack then for someone that's wet and heavy and smooth, because you're counteracting that. Does that mean that someone that's dry and light and rough can't have the popcorn? No. It means understanding the way that you're going to have the popcorn. So to counteract those dry, light, rough qualities, you want to put some wet, heavy, smooth type qualities. Buttered popcorn. Yum. You've just completely changed it by using applied Ayurveda. Or in this case, we might say popcorn with ghee. Yum. So you can still do whatever you like. It's just understanding how to apply it. So Ayurveda can be easy. Okay. So we've talked now about maybe our yoga practice and how it can change. We've talked about our state of mind and how it can change. The colors, I am a really poor example of Ayurveda with the colors because I'm wearing black, and black has no lightness. It's got a very heavy type quality to it. However, I'm in a room that has a bucket load of oil that comes through it, and black is the color that I'm wearing. So I have on my logo deliberately, I have green and I have red and yellow and brown. And in here, this is my color. This is my elements. Because when I'm feeling stimulated, I want something that's green and blue. I want something that's going to pacify all of that heat and all of that need for routine and control and structure. Think about it like water, kind of let's go. And then when I'm in a state where, I really can't be bothered at the moment, I've got red, because red's going to give me that pickup and that fire, completely the opposite. So the colors that you're wearing can very much influence your state of mind and your state of health. And one of the things I get asked a lot is, what should I eat? And one of the things that I like to do is to say, think about how you feel. If we're treating an imbalance, we always treat the imbalance first. I should say that as a disclaimer. But generally, think about how you feel. If you're feeling cold, have something hot. If you're feeling a little bit heavy, have something light. Really think about this when you're going through Christmas. You can get a little bit disconnected, and out that inner intelligence, that ability to actually listen to how you're feeling and what your body and your mind wants, can get a little bit lost throughout Christmas. So think about it. And a food diary is a really great way of keeping track. And doing a little bit of a diary, thinking about your pillars, your vata, your breathing, sleeping, diet and elimination. Again, 1 to 5, where you're at. Or sattva, rajas and tamas. Where am I at in this moment? What is influencing how I'm feeling, how I'm reacting? Think about it. All I'm talking about is this idea that like increases like. You want something to have one effect, the same effect, or a different effect. This is it. This is keeping that balance. It's either going to be the same, it's going to increase or decrease. What do you want? What are you looking at? One of the reasons why on the property of aligning health, everything is facing out into the fields. Everything. Are the fields dry? Are they brittle? Are they rough? Right, I want moisture. Is it wet? Is it dense? Is it green? Right, I want a little bit more dryness. I'm working with nature. Okay, so here, I think I spoke this before with my dice. So there's an intention. Am I feeling like I need that little bit of a lift? Am I feeling a little bit of rajasic? Do I need to lift myself up and out? Where is my intention when I'm practicing yoga? Am I working around that equilibrium? Or do I just need to stop this movement and just let go? Do I need to come down? And when I asked you before, remember, working with young people all day, being on the Monash freeway, racing to a yoga class, please put me in that seated forward bend. Please help me to get down. Bring those heavy, warming, nurturing qualities before I start to move into anything else. In Ayurveda, we need sweet. I cannot stress enough that we need sweet. It's the ratio, however, that every individual is going to need. So when we're working with an order of eating, we start with sweet, and that helps us to feel satisfied. And then we move through that lemon. Remember that lemon started that digestive capacity, and we move through all of the 6 tastes. So we have sweet, sour, salty, pungent, bitter, astringent, and we finish with sweet. And one of the things that I've said in classes before, you have a beautiful meal, particularly now because our restaurants are open. Thank goodness for the hospitality industry over this summer period. We have a beautiful meal. We're kind of still hungry. Well, we're not really hungry. We kind of just have cravings. And we'll go out for cake and coffee afterwards. But it's not that we're hungry. We've just had a really beautiful entree and main, but the sweet's missing. So it's suggested in Ayurveda, if you start with a sweet taste first, that doesn't mean a Black Forest cake. It means something sweet like wheat or like rice or, I don't know, I said before, pumpkin, something that's got that sweet quality. Then move through the meal. You're not looking for something afterwards, and finish with that sweet taste. I'm not talking about dessert, that sweet taste. And there's so much more that we can talk about food. Okay. So in here, this is that life coaching. You know, I live in Bendigo and I practice Ayurveda and run a yoga and Ayurvedic health retreat. Sometimes Ayurveda is a little bit confronting, just the word Ayurveda. So we can talk about life coaching. So we know that we've got our natural genetic constitution, and we know that we are that our genetics here. We know that our actions and thoughts, the lifestyle, the sedentary lifestyle, and the high sugar content, high sweet content is going to lead to an action. And we've got maybe we can't have a job that is has more movement about it. Maybe we are stuck with a sedentary lifestyle. But all of this, we can start to work out where are we leading towards in our health? And it might not be now, but 5, 10 years, 15 years down the track. What is going on? What is it looking like? Our thoughts and our actions. And we can come back to psychology here if we want to. We can think about what is the motivation behind our behavior? Are we aware of it? Are we not? Is it with our constitution? Do we know what's leading us? What's our desire here? And I touched on really briefly about the idea of aligning health and how hard it would be to align health because we are influenced by the times of the day and those qualities that exist in the times of the day. So in the beginning, when we wake up 6 to 10, there is a heaviness. I used to teach yoga, and when I lived on the other side of Bendigo, I'd teach yoga, and out over the paddocks, it was a mist and there was dew. And, I would sometimes think, why am I getting up in the middle, early mornings to teach yoga? It's so cold, but it's so beautiful when you've got that warmth that you're cultivating during that yoga practice. This needs heat to be able to wake up, if you like. And then our digestive fire, our digestive capacity is at its peak in the middle of the day. And then there's movement. We've got to go get the kids from school. Maybe this is our creative thinking time in the afternoon. Maybe there's a little bit too much movement. We need to pacify it a bit. We might reach for chocolate or maybe a milky coffee, something that's going to stimulate us to get us through the end of the day. We are influenced by that circadian rhythm. If we stay up I'm about to do study next year as well. I know how hard it is to do study as a mature age student. I really do. Okay, I know how tempting it is to stay up after 10 when all the kids are in bed and study. However, I also know if you do that, you're never going to get to sleep because you've got this pitta second fire and then you could go all night and it's detrimental. You need to go to sleep before 10 o'clock because we have this inertia type quality of kapha. Okay. All right. So this is called our daily routine, our evening routine, our seasonal routine. So we can break our whole day up into these areas. And I told you, we're not going to go into all of this because it's too much. If I gave a new client this, they'd probably freaking run away and never see me. Where can you start? What can you start with? Today, I've asked you to scrape your tongue. That's it. Pardon me, it's not it. I've also asked you to look at your bowel movements, to think about your bowel movements. That's enough. Just get that into solid practice. Once that's in solid practice, then start to think about the other things and it becomes part of a lifestyle, part of a routine. And if you think about when I said about the causes of ill health with Ayurveda, one of the causes of ill health in Ayurveda is stress. The more structure, the more rhythm, the more routine we can have, the less vata aggravation, the less stress, the more that we're just working with that circadian rhythm, our natural lifestyle. Okay. Well, are there any questions at this stage that anyone would like to ask? Is there any feedback that you'd like to give me about one thing that has really stood out for you? While you're thinking, I'm going to press pause now and I'm going to ask you to go to your kitchen. Thank you, Joanne. Yoga for the individual. Thank you. Jody, structure and routine. Thank you. I'm going to press pause. I'm going to ask you to go to your kitchen. I'm going to ask you to find whatever oil you have. I really don't mind for this purpose. If you've got black sesame oil, if you've got a little bit of ghee, if you don't mind, we're going to do a hand massage. If you've got some coconut oil, if you've got olive oil, I really don't mind. I'd like you just to go to your kitchen, bring back a towel with you and your oil, and we're going to finish off with a hand massage. Okay, so we'll come back in just a couple of minutes and sit together again just for this last part. One of the questions that's come up is about shift workers. It can be very challenging because it really does go against this circadian rhythm. So in Ayurveda, it's said to get up at the same time every day and go to bed at the same time every day. However, there are some exceptions. There are some exceptions if you're unwell, if you're pregnant, if you've got a small child, if you're doing shift work. And then the recommendation is that you have a day sleep, but for only half the time of the time that you missed out on. So, for example, if you work all night, and particularly, with all of our healthcare workers, thank you at this stage, if you're working all night and you do an 8-hour shift, you would sleep for 4 hours during the day. You wouldn't sleep for the whole 8 hours. And it really does, it does over time cause havoc with the body as well, which we know. Okay. So the idea of Abhyanga is to be able to calm the nervous system, nourish the body. It's a beautiful way of working with mindfulness. I was asked about mindfulness yesterday. This is a beautiful way. You've got that sense of touch. You've got that sense of breathing. You've got that sense of connectedness. And then by using an oil, because when there's lots of movement, when I'm standing at the top of Cradle Mountain, it's dry. I want to put some moisture, some care back into the body. So we're just using any oil for today's purposes that you've got. And then with Ayurveda, we can always treat the individual and target what's going on. So I told you I'm going back to study next year. So I have myself a bottle of Brahmi oil, and Talam is an oil. So I know that Brahmi in the sesame oil Brahmi is really good for intellect, it's good for memory, it's good for studying, it's good for the nervous system. And I know that the sesame oil is a really nourishing carrier. And it's going to be beautiful to bring this herb into my body. So I've got that pacification of the oiliness and the sweetness and the nourishment of the sesame oil with the addition of Brahmi. Does this mean that all people massage with Brahmi? No. It means that you can target even more, in the words of Dr. Pratibha, even more a sharper response when you're using a specific oil for a specific purpose. But first, you need to work out what it is that you're using it for. Okay, so what I'm going to ask you now is to put the towel over your legs or your knees or your table or wherever you are, and just start to rub some oil into your hands. Just starting to rub some oil into your hands. And we can do this same practice with our feet. But tonight we're just going to do it with our hands. And if you're feeling a little bit out of center or today's been a busy day, putting oil on the feet is amazing for that grounding, that nurturing quality. Okay. And then we're going to find that part where there's a little bit of a groove between the hand and the wrist. And we're just going to put a little bit more oil on, and we're going to circle in a clockwise direction 8 times. Just hoping to open up that point. And I'm going to work around the joints here on the wrist. And we'll be doing exactly the same principle for our feet, around our ankles. Good. And then we're going to go from that point in the wrist down to the middle finger, from the point down to the ring finger, down to the middle finger, down to the index finger, and down to the thumb. And we're going to start from that point and go down into the joints now of the little finger, lubricating all those joints of the little finger, all those joints of the ring finger. Don't forget the fingernail, all the joints of the middle finger, of the index finger, and of the thumb. Good. And then we're going to turn the hand over and we're going to work again on that part where the hand and the wrist meet. There's just a little bit of a groove. We're going to put some oil there. I'm going to circle 8 times. Good. And then we're going to circle around the whole area of that wrist, inside of the wrist. And then rub your thumb around all of those points, touching all of those points. Good. And then pressing in the middle. And starting to rub the hands together. Being aware of how you feel, being aware of your breath. And then coming to the opposite hand, and again finding that point in the middle where it moves and starting to circle 8 times in that direction, making sure that you've got oil. And then rubbing your thumb around the areas, the points of the wrist. And then from that point, going down the little finger, the ring finger, the middle finger, the little finger, the thumb, to that point, to the joints of the little finger, the joints of the ring finger, the joints of the middle finger, of the index finger, of the thumb, and then turning the hand over and finding that groove, working in that groove, circling 8 times and rubbing the thumb over that area and the whole of the palm, feeling the whole of the palm, and then pressing into the middle of the palm, rubbing both hands together. Notice if your movement is fast. Notice if your movement is slow. And when you're ready, we might put our hands facing down on the top of the legs, on the top of the table. Wherever you've got your towel, you may even close your eyes. And just feel any thoughts that come into the mind. Be aware of any sensation that comes into the body. Know that you are completely okay where you are right now, just becoming aware. And then when you're ready, opening your eyes. And I hope that by now you have a good understanding of what Ayurveda means, a good understanding of the theory and how to practically apply it, and how to look for the core root of your own issue. Some of the tools and strategies that you can use to help to balance your mind and your body and your spirit. I think you know how to keep in touch with us. If you'd like to ask any questions, this is what we do at Aligning Health. This is our passion. We love to share and we love to teach. Thank you for joining us tonight.